She left him the moment life got hard. Mark had always worked long hours, giving everything to provide for his family. But one day, everything changed. His company closed suddenly, and he found himself without a steady income. The stress was heavy on his shoulders, and he tried his best to stay positive for his kids, Lily and Ethan. He thought he could handle it, that together they would get through this. Sarah, his wife, didn't see it the same way. At first, she seemed supportive, but soon her words became sharp and her smiles faded. She started complaining about the bills, about how hard life had become, and how Mark wasn't enough anymore. He would try to talk to her, to show her that they could rebuild, but she barely listened. The kids noticed the tension. Lily stopped asking questions, and Ethan became quiet and withdrawn. Mark felt torn. He wanted to protect them, but he couldn't shield them from everything. He stayed up late, thinking about what he could do, how to make things better, but Sarah's coldness made it harder. He felt like he was losing not only his job and money, but also the family he loved more than anything. Then one morning, he woke up to an empty house. Sarah was gone. There were no long explanations, no pleas, no last-minute decisions, just a note. It said she couldn't live like this anymore, and that she needed to find a better life, leaving the kids and him behind. Mark couldn't believe what he was reading. The words felt like knives, cutting through all the trust and love he had given. He looked around the house, at the small toys scattered on the floor, at Lily's favorite blanket, at Ethan's drawings on the fridge, and felt an emptiness he had never known before. For days, Mark barely ate, barely slept. He wandered the house, trying to understand how someone could walk away from everything they promised to protect. He thought about calling her, begging her to come back, but he realized that might never happen. Instead, he focused on the kids. Lily and Ethan were scared and confused, and he knew he had to be strong for them, even if his own heart was breaking. He reminded himself that life didn't end here. He would find a way to survive, to make things better for his children, even if Sarah never returned. Every day, he woke up determined to provide love and stability for them, to show them that even in betrayal and loss, it was possible to rebuild. Mark didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing: they would get through this together. And slowly, he began to see the first signs of hope, small and fragile, but enough to keep moving forward. The pain was real, the betrayal sharp, but Mark refused to let it destroy the family that mattered most. He had lost Sarah, but he had not lost his purpose, his heart, or his children's love. And that, he realized, was the beginning of a new life. After Sarah left, Mark thought the worst was over, but the tension had already started to grow before she walked out. Even before leaving, her behavior had changed. She no longer smiled like she used to, and small words of frustration slipped out almost every day. She blamed Mark for their problems, saying things like, "If you had done better at work, we wouldn't be in this mess." Her voice was sharp, and even the kids noticed. Lily would ask quietly if Mommy was mad at Daddy, and Ethan would look down, afraid to say anything. Sarah started talking to her friends about their situation, hinting that she couldn't handle living in a home where money was tight. Mark overheard some of the conversations, and it hurt more than he expected. He had given everything to this family, late nights, early mornings, skipped vacations, and now he felt like all of it didn't matter to her. Despite her attitude, Mark tried to stay calm. He would sit with Sarah and the kids at the dinner table, trying to keep things normal. "We can get through this," he said gently. "We just have to work together." He tried to show her that he was still the same man she had married, that he still loved her and the kids more than anything. But she didn't respond. Her eyes were distant, and her words were short and cold. Each day, her resentment grew more obvious. She complained about the bills, the groceries, the house, and even small things like the way Mark cooked dinner or helped with the kids' homework. Every word felt like a reminder that he was failing, not just at work, but at being a husband and father in her eyes. He tried to defend himself, but every explanation only seemed to make her more frustrated. The kids began to feel the tension too. Lily stopped laughing during family games, and Ethan refused to eat sometimes, saying he wasn't hungry. Mark felt helpless. He wanted to protect them from the coldness, to shield them from Sarah's resentment, but he couldn't. He couldn't control her feelings or make her stay. Mark spent nights lying awake, thinking about what he could do to fix things. He tried being patient, trying to understand her point of view, and tried showing her small acts of love, making her coffee, taking care of chores, but nothing seemed to reach her. Her distance was like a wall, growing taller each day, and he felt himself slowly breaking inside. Even with the kids depending on him, Mark felt a deep sadness he couldn't shake. The house that used to be filled with laughter and warmth now felt cold and heavy. He realized that love alone wasn't enough to keep a family together if one person had already decided to walk away. Every attempt to reassure her ended in rejection, and every smile he tried to give the kids felt forced. The growing tension made him question everything he had worked for and everything he thought he knew about love and loyalty. Mark had started noticing small things disappearing from the house. A few of Sarah's clothes were missing from the closet, her favorite coffee mugs were gone, and some of the kids' toys had been quietly packed away. At first, he thought she might be organizing or cleaning, but deep down, a growing worry gnawed at him. One evening, she told him she was going to a weekend friends retreat to clear her mind and relax. Mark tried to be supportive, thinking maybe it would help her calm down and feel better. He didn't know it was a lie. While he tried to sleep that night, Sarah was quietly packing her car, slipping in clothes, the kids' favorite blankets, and everything she could take. The next morning, Mark woke up to an empty house. The bed was made, the kitchen silent, and the sound of the children's laughter gone. Panic hit him immediately as he called out for Lily and Ethan, but no one answered. Then he saw the note lying on the counter in Sarah's handwriting. "I can't live like this. I deserve better." The words felt like a punch to his chest. Mark sank into the floor, unable to breathe properly. He looked around at the empty spaces where his life used to be. The kids' backpacks, their shoes, their little jackets hanging by the door, all gone. The house that had once been full of love and laughter felt hollow and lifeless. Mark felt a mixture of shock, disbelief, and humiliation. How could someone he loved so much, who promised to stand by him in every situation, just walk away? He replayed every moment, every argument, every smile they had shared, wondering where it had gone wrong. Nothing made sense. He felt betrayed not only by Sarah, but by the life he thought they had built together. The emotional weight was almost too much to bear. He tried calling her, texting her, but there was no reply. The number went straight to voicemail, and every attempt made him feel smaller, weaker, and more alone. The silence from her felt deafening, as if the world itself had turned against him. Even the children were gone. The thought of them being with her, hearing her voice instead of his, filled him with sorrow and helplessness. Mark wanted to scream, to beg her to come back, but he had nothing left to hold on to. The betrayal wasn't just leaving. It was the coldness, the planning, the lies that had gone into it. Mark sat there for hours, staring at the note, feeling every word burn into him. He realized in that moment that life had changed forever. The woman he had loved, the family he had worked so hard to protect, had abandoned him when he needed them most. And in that emptiness, with the house echoing around him, Mark understood the depth of the betrayal he had suffered. A pain he had never imagined, a wound that cut straight to his heart. It was the kind of hurt that left him numb, shattered, and questioning everything he thought he knew about trust, love, and loyalty. Yet even in that dark moment, a tiny part of him knew he had to survive, for himself, and for the children he still loved more than anything. After Sarah left, life became a heavy weight on Mark's shoulders. Bills piled up, the house felt empty, and the silence of his children not being around was unbearable. Some days, he didn't want to get out of bed. Depression settled in, and every task felt impossible. Simple chores, cooking meals, or answering calls became overwhelming. He would sit alone, staring at the walls, thinking about what had gone wrong. The loneliness was crushing. Nights were the hardest, filled with memories of laughter that now felt like echoes from another life. He wondered if he had failed them all. He questioned his worth as a husband and as a father, feeling lost in a world that had suddenly become cold and empty. Despite this, thoughts of Lily and Ethan pulled him forward. He remembered how they used to run to him after school, how their small hands fit perfectly in his, and how their laughter could light up any room. These memories gave him small sparks of strength. He knew he had to keep going for them, even if Sarah had abandoned the family. He started setting routines, making sure the children's needs were met, and slowly building a sense of normalcy in their disrupted lives. Sarah occasionally called, but the conversations were brief and cold. She would ask about the children in a detached way, rarely showing genuine care, and sometimes she seemed dismissive, leaving Mark feeling both anger and sadness. Each call reminded him of the gap she had created, yet also reinforced the importance of keeping the children's world stable and full of love from him. Mark spent time organizing the house, cooking meals, and trying to be both mother and father to Lily and Ethan. Even small victories, like seeing them smile or hearing them laugh, gave him hope. He focused on teaching them, playing with them, and showing them that love could still exist even when one parent was absent. He started making lists, planning ways to rebuild his life financially and emotionally. Some days were harder than others, and the despair returned, threatening to overwhelm him. But he reminded himself that giving up wasn't an option. The children depended on him, and he owed it to them to keep moving forward. Through sleepless nights and long days, Mark began to accept that life had changed forever. He couldn't control Sarah's choices, but he could control his own. Every small effort, every kind word, every moment of patience with Lily and Ethan became a brick in the foundation of a new life. Though the pain of betrayal and abandonment was real, Mark slowly discovered resilience he didn't know he had. He realized that even in despair, there was a way forward. For his children, for himself, he would survive, and he would rise above the emptiness Sarah had left behind. Mark knew he couldn't stay in the same place forever. The sadness and loneliness were heavy, but he realized that if he wanted a better life for himself and his children, he had to take action. He decided to rebuild from scratch, even though the thought was scary. There was no one to rely on but himself, and he had to be strong. He thought about the skills he had learned over the years, managing projects, organizing people, problem-solving, and decided to start a small business. At first, it was slow. He worked long hours, often late into the night, making calls, meeting clients, and handling every detail himself. There were times when he doubted himself, worried that he wasn't good enough or that he would fail again. But he reminded himself that giving up wasn't an option. Bit by bit, things began to change. Clients started trusting him, and word of his work spread. Every small success gave him a boost of confidence. He started to see that he could create something meaningful without Sarah's support or approval. The pride of building something from the ground up filled him with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Alongside the business, Mark's emotional growth became clear. He became more patient, more focused, and more in control of his own life. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but it no longer defined him. He realized that his self-worth wasn't tied to what Sarah thought or how she treated him. He was capable, strong, and deserving of respect and happiness. Mark also noticed a change in how he interacted with Lily and Ethan. He was calmer, more present, and more confident in guiding them through life's challenges. The bond with his children grew stronger as he modeled resilience and determination. They began to see their father not just as someone surviving, but as someone thriving despite everything. Even when Sarah called occasionally, Mark no longer felt the need to defend himself or explain his choices. He understood that her opinions didn't matter to the life he was building. He had learned that true strength comes from within, and that the past could not control the future. As the business grew, Mark began to feel a sense of freedom. He could provide for his children, pay the bills on time, and plan for the future without fear. The confidence he gained spilled into every part of his life. He laughed more, he smiled more, and he felt proud of who he was becoming. The turning point wasn't sudden. It came quietly through persistence, hard work, and the choice to keep moving forward. Mark understood that betrayal had hurt him deeply, but it had also taught him the value of resilience. He was no longer the man who had been left behind. He was stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever life would bring next, with his children by his side. At first, Sarah's life after leaving seemed perfect. She moved into a luxury apartment, bought expensive clothes, and dated wealthy men who treated her well. Or at least, that's how it appeared. From the outside, she seemed happy, confident, and in control. She posted pictures and told her friends about her new lifestyle, showing off the freedom she had gained by leaving Mark and the kids behind. But behind the glamorous facade, things were far from perfect. Sarah struggled with loneliness. Even in crowded rooms or during fancy dinners, she felt an emptiness she couldn't escape. The laughter of other people around her only reminded her of the family she had abandoned. She missed the simple things she had once taken for granted. The quiet mornings with the kids, bedtime stories, and the warmth of a home that truly belonged to her. Guilt weighed heavily on her. She thought about Lily and Ethan often, wondering if they were okay, if they remembered her, if they were hurting. Sometimes she would call, but the conversations were awkward and brief. She couldn't connect with them the way she used to. Her attempts to talk to them ended in frustration. Lily and Ethan seemed distant, polite but cold, and it hurt her more than she expected. Raising the children from a distance proved harder than she imagined. She tried to buy their love with gifts and outings, but the bond she had broken couldn't be fixed with money. Every failed attempt left her feeling frustrated and even more isolated. The freedom she had sought now felt empty, and the luxury that once dazzled her seemed shallow and meaningless. Meanwhile, Mark's life quietly grew in a different way. His small business was gaining stability, he had routines, and the home he shared with Lily and Ethan was warm and filled with laughter again. Every day, he proved to himself and the children that life could continue, even after betrayal. He was building something real, something lasting, while Sarah's world, though flashy and exciting, was fragile. Sarah began to notice the difference. She heard about Mark's progress from mutual acquaintances or through glimpses of the children's achievements. It stung. She realized that while she had chosen comfort and glamour, Mark had chosen resilience, love, and commitment, and it was paying off. He was happy, successful, and still deeply loved by the children she had left behind. The contrast was undeniable. Mark had rebuilt a life that mattered, full of real connections and purpose, while Sarah's life, despite appearances, felt hollow. She started to see that leaving had given her freedom, but it had also taken away the love and respect she had once had. The loneliness and guilt grew stronger every day, quietly eating at her confidence. For all her wealth and comfort, Sarah began to understand that some losses can't be replaced with money or status. The life she thought she wanted wasn't giving her the happiness she had imagined, and she began to feel the weight of the choices she had made. Months passed, and Mark's hard work began to pay off. His small business started growing faster than he ever expected. Clients appreciated his honesty, reliability, and dedication, and soon he was getting referrals from people he had never even met. The respect from his community made him feel proud, not just for himself, but for Lily and Ethan. He realized that he was building a life they could depend on, a life full of stability and love. As Mark's success became more visible, Sarah began to notice. She saw how well he was doing and how happy the kids seemed around him. It hit her in ways she hadn't expected. For the first time, she felt a twinge of fear and regret. She began to reach out, calling Lily and Ethan more often and trying to arrange visits, hoping to reconnect and show them she still cared. But the children were different now. They had grown used to Mark's consistency, his patience, and his love. They had begun to feel safe and happy again, even without their mother present every day. When Sarah tried to reconnect, Lily and Ethan didn't respond with the warmth she expected. They were polite, but their words carried disappointment and hurt. "Mom, why did you leave us?" Lily asked quietly one day during a call. Her voice was steady, but there was a sadness in her tone that cut deep. Ethan added, "We needed you, and you weren't here." The questions weren't angry. They were full of confusion and sadness. It was clear that they remembered her absence and that it had left a mark. Hearing their words, Sarah felt the first real sting of guilt. She realized that leaving had consequences she couldn't undo with fancy gifts, dinners, or apologies. The children had built their lives around Mark's love and support, and she couldn't simply step back in as if nothing had happened. For Mark, this was both heartbreaking and relieving. He felt the weight of the children's pain, but he also saw how resilient they had become. They were strong, loving, and capable of understanding the truth. In that moment, he realized that he didn't need revenge or confrontation. Life itself was showing Sarah the results of her choices. As Sarah struggled to reconnect, she began to understand that Mark's quiet perseverance and dedication had given him something she could never take away: respect, love, and a bond with the children built on trust and consistency. Meanwhile, her attempts to regain influence only reminded her of what she had lost. The emotional reality hit hard. Karma was quietly unfolding. Mark's life was flourishing because of his integrity and hard work, while Sarah's attempts to regain what she abandoned were met with resistance, regret, and the children's clear disappointment. She had chosen comfort over family, and now she was seeing the true cost of that decision in the eyes of Lily and Ethan. Mark watched from a distance, quietly proud, knowing that the justice of life didn't need words or revenge. It was showing itself naturally, in the love and loyalty of his children and the respect he had earned in his community. Mark had reached a point in his life where he no longer needed to prove anything to Sarah. He was successful, respected, and deeply connected to Lily and Ethan. But he noticed how Sarah had begun to flaunt her life, showing off her wealth and new friends, trying to prove she had made the right choice by leaving. Mark realized that her image was built on appearances, not reality, and he decided it was time she saw the truth. subtly, without confrontation or anger. He started by being visible in the circles she frequented. People began to notice his success and the stability he had created for his children. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues shared stories of his integrity, his hard work, and how he had rebuilt his life from nothing. Mark didn't speak badly of Sarah. He simply let the facts of his life and the children's happiness speak for themselves. Sarah, on the other hand, had relied on appearances. She had exaggerated her lifestyle to impress others, showing off expensive dinners, fancy clothes, and wealthy men by her side. But as people saw Mark thriving while she seemed increasingly anxious, inconsistencies in her story began to show. Conversations she had with friends or acquaintances revealed that her wealth was temporary, that she struggled behind the scenes, and that her influence wasn't as strong as she claimed. Word began to spread. People she had relied on for validation started to question her choices, noticing the gaps between her image and reality. Invitations became fewer, and she realized that the social world she had counted on for status and attention wasn't as loyal as she had thought. Meanwhile, Mark continued to focus on his life, his business, and the kids. He didn't need to attack Sarah personally, because life was already showing the consequences of her selfishness. Her reputation began to crumble quietly, and she felt isolated in ways she had never expected. The very people she had sought to impress now saw through the mask she had built. For Mark, this was a moment of quiet satisfaction. He had not humiliated her, nor had he shouted or demanded justice. He had simply lived well, built love and stability around himself, and let truth and integrity shine where selfishness and deceit had once ruled. That was his revenge, subtle, real, and lasting. Sarah, meanwhile, faced the consequences of abandoning her family. Her relationships weakened, and the admiration she had once enjoyed faded. She saw the life she had left behind thriving in Mark's hands while she struggled to maintain control over the superficial image she had created. Mark understood that justice did not require anger or confrontation. It came naturally through hard work, honesty, and resilience. His children were happy, his business was growing, and Sarah's lies and selfishness were being exposed by life itself. The revenge he had quietly achieved was far stronger than any outburst. It was a life rebuilt, a family healed, and a truth that could not be denied. Through patience and perseverance, Mark had turned betrayal into triumph, proving that the most powerful justice comes not from retaliation, but from rising above and letting life reveal the truth. One afternoon, Sarah called Lily and Ethan, her voice unusually soft and pleading. She told them she missed them and wanted them to spend a weekend with her. She spoke about how she had changed, how things were different now, and how she wanted to make up for the past. At first, the children listened quietly, but there was hesitation in their tone. They had heard similar words before, promises that were never kept. When they told Mark about the call, he didn't stop them from going. He wanted them to make their own choice. He simply said, "Whatever you decide, I'll support you." His calmness showed how much he had grown. He no longer carried anger or bitterness. He had found peace within himself. The day came when Sarah waited at a cafe, expecting to see her children walk through the door. But they never arrived. Instead, she got a short message from Lily that said, "We're staying with Dad. He's been here for us every day." Reading those words, Sarah felt something inside her break. She looked around at the people passing by, the laughter, the noise, and yet she felt completely alone. The realization hit her hard. She had chosen to walk away from love, and now that love no longer waited for her. Mark didn't celebrate or boast. He didn't need to. His life spoke for itself. His business was thriving, his children were happy, and he had built everything on honesty and hard work. When people talked about him, it was with respect and admiration. Sarah's name, on the other hand, carried whispers of regret and poor choices. Later, Sarah showed up unannounced at Mark's house. She stood at the doorway, her eyes full of tears. She looked at the children playing in the yard and then at Mark, who was fixing something by the porch. For a moment, she didn't say anything. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "You did it," she said quietly. "You built everything back." Mark looked at her kindly but with a firmness that came from peace, not pride. "I didn't do it to prove anything," he said softly. "I did it for them, and for myself." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything he had been through. Sarah's eyes filled with regret. She could see the life she had thrown away, one built on love, effort, and loyalty. She wanted to ask for forgiveness, but the gap between them was too wide now. The children barely looked at her. their affection belonging fully to the father who had stayed. Mark didn't try to hurt her or remind her of her mistakes. He simply turned back to his work, his calmness showing her that she no longer had any power over him. His revenge wasn't through words or actions. It was in the peace he had found, the respect he had earned, and the happiness that surrounded him. As Sarah walked away, she knew that the price of her choices had finally come due. Mark's quiet strength and his rebuilt life were the answers to everything she had broken. He didn't need to say a word. His success, his love, and his peace were the final proof that true revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about living so well that they have to watch what they lost forever. Years passed, and life settled into a calm rhythm for Mark and his children. The house that once felt empty was now full of laughter again. Every evening, they shared dinner together, talking about school, work, and their dreams. Lily was preparing for college, and Ethan had grown into a kind and hardworking young man, just like his father. Watching them grow, Mark felt proud not only of what he had achieved, but of the people they had become. They had all been broken once, but together, they had learned how to heal. Mark's days were peaceful. His business continued to do well, but what made him happiest wasn't the money or success. It was the sense of stability and love that surrounded him. The pain that used to haunt him had faded, replaced by quiet gratitude. He no longer thought about what Sarah had done or how unfair life once seemed. Those memories had lost their power over him. He had survived the worst and turned it into something meaningful. Sarah's life, however, took a different path. The luxury and attention she once craved slowly disappeared. The people she had tried to impress moved on to new faces, and the men she had dated lost interest when her charm faded. She found herself in a small apartment, alone most nights, scrolling through old photos of her children. Sometimes she tried to call, but the conversations were short and distant. They had forgiven her, but they no longer needed her the way they once did. That was the price of her choices. She had walked away from her family, and now she was left watching them live without her. There were moments when Sarah would see Mark and the kids in town. They looked happy, content, complete. She would stand from afar, watching them laugh, knowing that the peace she once destroyed had been rebuilt, just without her. Each time, the weight of regret grew heavier, but she couldn't undo the past. Her loneliness became her punishment, a quiet reminder of what she had lost forever. Mark, on the other hand, didn't feel hatred toward her anymore. He had moved beyond anger. He even wished her well in his heart, hoping she found some peace too. His journey had taught him that true revenge isn't about seeing someone fall. It's about rising so high that the past no longer defines you. One evening, Mark sat by the porch, watching the sunset with Lily and Ethan beside him. The air was calm, the sky painted in warm colors. Ethan leaned his head on his father's shoulder and said softly, "Dad, you never gave up on us." Mark smiled and replied, "Because love doesn't quit, it rebuilds." In that moment, everything felt complete. The pain, the betrayal, the struggle, all of it had led to this peace. Sarah had chosen a different road, one that ended in emptiness. But Mark's path, though painful, had led him to strength, respect, and unconditional love. His story was proof that real revenge doesn't come from hurting others. It comes from healing yourself so deeply that no one can ever break you again. And for Mark, that was more than enough.